there's always little touches that I'm aware that I'm taking little bits from my real life, but over the years I've tried to force myself to write in a more fictional mode where I'm trying to, like, especially the book that I'm working on now, is I'm trying to always come up with characters that I think are very different from myself, living in circumstances different from mine, maybe a different age than I've actually experienced or haven't experienced in a long time. And then in hindsight, I go back and look at some of these stories, and I think that this will even be more evident to me in the future. There's just all kinds of autobiographical elements that I hadn't even really consciously put in there, and it's sort of like very obvious what from my own life was guiding these supposedly fictional stories. So it's sort of hard to get away from, at least for me. And I think most authors, if analyzed correctly, could find a lot of autobiographical qualities in their work, if not the actual story or character, but just even whatever guided them to this fictional subject matter or something like that. So it's hard for me to get away from, even when I try. But it's, I'm certainly not. In the past, I did do things where I was sort of taking a very simple, clear experience from my own life and, like, very thinly veiling it with just a few minor changes and thinking that was, going to fool people in my real life and they recognize themselves. But that's not really the way I work anymore. The thing about my move to New York is a lot of times I get asked, like, about the difference or my preferences between living in California and living in New York, and part of the problem I have with answering that is that it's not just a geographical change. Like, I was living in California for a long time, living by myself in the same apartment that I lived in when I was a college student, kind of living a, collegiate kind of lifestyle for much longer than I should have been, and eating burritos in front of the TV every night, and that's how I sort of thought of my life in California. And I basically moved to New York to get married and start a family, and so now it's hard for me to separate that. So I think of New York in a positive way, but I understand that it's tied in a lot with, like, the joy I get from playing with my daughter every day, and more so than the opera that I never go see in New York. There's all these cultural things that I could be enjoying, but I don't get out that much. When I meet a young aspiring cartoonist who's, like, in high school or something, it's hard for them to get their head around the idea of taking paper down to Kinko's and Xeroxing it and folding it, and then what do you do with this thing? Whereas in half that time they could scan it and put it up on the internet and the whole world could see it. So it's hard for me to make the case for the way I worked. But obviously in theory someone could do that, and I actually think that in some ways it's better, because I think maybe, like, I wouldn't have wanted everyone in the world to have access to those first things that I did when I was putting them out, and I certainly wouldn't want to expose myself to the comment sections of blogs now, where you could totally devastate someone anonymously.
And there's something very important about, like, discovering or feeling like you've discovered something rather than.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if that will continue, but I try sort of in vain to get younger cartoonists to still consider that as a possible starting point, rather than getting an agent and doing a graphic novel right off the bat.